What's going on, guys? Today in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Feiyu Tech A2000, my experiences with the gimbal, and my overall feeling about this gimbal. Now really quick before we get into my pros and cons of the gimbal, let's just briefly touch on what you're going to be getting with the gimbal if you decide to purchase it. The first thing that you're going to see when you get the gimbal is the carrying case that it comes in, which just so happens to be one of my favorite things about the gimbal, oddly enough. It's a really nice padded, but it's like kind of hard. It's like a mesh material. I don't know, the bag is really nice and it breaks down really small. You get the carrying case for the gimbal. You also get the gimbal itself. You get the 4 batteries to power the gimbal. You get the charger. And you get the typical wires that come with pretty much every other gimbal, as well as a really nice Manfrotto compatible quick release plate. So the A2000 model that I have is just the pistol grip model. I didn't get the dual handles. They sent this over to me, full disclosure. I'm not getting paid by them though. This is just my own real world experience and just how I feel about it. It's not a sponsorship. So the configuration that I have without the dual handles comes in at around 449 bucks, and that's pretty affordable. It's kind of sort of sitting in that range with the Zhiyun Crane V2. I'm not even sure what that sits at right now. I don't know. I'll put that up on the screen so you can compare pricing, but this gimbal is actually pretty affordable for what it can do in the weight capacity that it can hold. So this gimbal right here, the A2000, holds a 4.4 pound weight capacity, which is pretty cool. I mean, most mid-range to consumer DSLRs and mirrorless cameras aren't over this weight capacity, so you can pretty much fit a lot of different cameras and lens setups on this gimbal. Now, aside from the things that you get as well as the price point of the gimbal, in this review I'm just going to talk about my different likes about the gimbal and my dislikes about it, and just my overall real world experience with it, how I felt while I was using it. And I'm gonna kind of sort of stray away from comparing it to other gimbals, but as we said earlier, it's in the same price range with the Zhiyun Crane V2, and I just so happen to have one of those as well. So I'll kind of touch on that at the end of this video, how I feel about this gimbal compared to that one. One other really cool thing about this gimbal is on the side of it, it has a 1/4-20 screw thread on it. So if you decide to use a monitor with the gimbal, then you can do that. Me personally, I wouldn't do that. I feel like if you're using pistol grip gimbals, you want to keep them as small and as minimal as possible, but the option is there if you want to add a monitor on there to get a better viewing angle when you're actually using your camera on this gimbal. So you can use it to film things, of course, but if you wanted to kind of sort of vlog on it, then you can use that little 1/4-20 thread on the side to attach a monitor, and use it on Sony, because Sonys are notorious for not having that swivel screen that you can just flip out and use. While you're using the A2000, you're going to instantly see it's a really large button on the outside of the gimbal that you can grip and press with your index finger while you're operating the gimbal. That button right there happens to be probably my most liked feature about this gimbal in its entirety. Now this button has a few different features, but the 2 different features that I love about it is if you double press that button on the outside, you get an instantaneous 180-degree spin of the gimbal. So say you were filming something that was in front of the camera and you just wanted to do that 180-degree spin to get the camera back to yourself in selfie mode. That's something that you can do instantly, and I think that's a really nice and cool feature for the people who may want to vlog on this, or may want to just be out doing some cool things and flip the camera around to show what else is going on the other side of the camera. Another really cool feature about this button is if you hold it, it completely locks off all motors. So while you're shooting, if you just hold this button, it'll completely lock off all motors and all sensitivity. Say you were just turning the handle, it's just gonna stay wherever the camera was. So if you find yourself in a situation where you just don't want the gimbal to move at all, you can just hold this while you're on the fly. It completely locks off the motors. I think that's a really cool feature for this gimbal, and probably my most liked feature in the gimbal's entirety. Another thing that I really like about the gimbal is the functionality between the gimbal and the application, the mobile app that you can use on your phone. Now I know a lot of people like to just use gimbals out of the box. They'll take it out, they set it up, they get it balanced, and they'll just use the settings that the company set the gimbal to be at. But that's not me. I like to have it a certain pan speed while I'm using it. I like to have input on the joystick that comes on the gimbal. I just like to customize my gimbal. So the fact that the application worked, a complete plus for me, because I've used other gimbals where I just was not able to get any contact between the gimbal and the smartphone application, and it was just the worst. So the fact that that works huge plus for me. Now real quick to dive into the dislikes about this gimbal, which just so happens to not be that many, but one huge dislike about this gimbal is the fact that it vibrates, and it vibrates hard. If you ever put your camera on this gimbal when you don't have it balanced to where it needs to be, it's gonna tell you, and it's gonna tell you hard. Like, this thing really vibrates. I've used other gimbals out there, like my primary Ronin, where if you don't have the balance perfect, the motors are gonna correct it. But on this one, if you're not spot on, this thing is gonna vibrate, and it's gonna tell you that you need to go back and you need to readjust your balance. And it's not even just with balancing. If you put a camera and a lens setup that is a little bit too heavy for this, it's gonna tell you, and it's gonna vibrate really hard. On the box of the gimbal, they're advertising a mid-size DSLR, which looks like a 60 5D Mark III, a 60 Mark II, and a 24-105, which is a completely huge lens. But when I went on the gimbal and I attempted to put on my 5D Mark III and the 35mm Sigma, this thing vibrated, and I wouldn't even say it was a balancing issue. It balanced out pretty well. It just continued to vibrate, and I really don't know why. The gimbal also tends to vibrate a lot in inverted mode, and I'm not sure what that's about, but I don't know. It just tends to just vibrate. Sometimes you can't even really see it in the footage that much or even at all, but you can definitely feel it in your hands. A lot of the vibrating that you feel, it doesn't really come through the camera, but I don't know, it feels like you are about to break the gimbal or something. I don't know. It feels like it's something that you shouldn't be doing over a long course of time. Either it's gonna burn out the batteries or it's just gonna completely ruin these motors in the long run. But as I said though, if you have the right lens set up on it where it's not too heavy, you get it balanced pretty well, the vibration isn't really an issue. You'll just feel it every now and then, and you'll feel like you're doing something wrong, and sometimes it doesn't even come through the actual footage, but sometimes it does though. The vibration is there, and I had to put it on the dislike side. Another dislike about this gimbal is it tends to lose horizon pretty often. I'm not sure what that's about either. Every now and then when you're using this for an extended amount of time, it'll just kind of sort of lose its horizon, so you just might have to reset it, or just adjust your horizon in post. Pretty minor fixes to it, but you gotta add that to the negative side. All in all though, that's like the only things that I dislike about this gimbal. Now real world use with it and how I feel about the gimbal, I honestly feel like this is a really solid gimbal. What's advertised for this gimbal, it pretty much does that. It provides really smooth footage. It's lightweight, I like the build of it. The actual carrying case for it is really nice. The application is decent. All in all, this is a really solid gimbal. Now earlier I said I would kind of compare it to the Crane V2 because I have that, and they're kind of sort of in the similar price range with each other. And overall, they really have the same experience. They're really both reliable gimbals, and they really both complete the job that they're advertised to do. Reliable, looks good, packs down well, battery life solid, application decent. What more could you ask for? If you guys are interested in the Feiyu Tech A2000, I'll leave a link down in the description for you all to check it out. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to drop me a like, comment, also subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Also, if you have any questions about something that I did not touch on in this review, make sure to drop it down in the comments. I'll make sure to answer that. Peace out, guys.